Minecraft horror story, The Last Night. Steve knew the night was wrong when the minecart under Blackpine Keep began moving by itself. The cart rolled once beneath the stone floor, stopped under the crafting room, and gave a soft metal click. Then it rolled back into the dark. No one had touched the lever. The powered rails were off. Steve stood beside the furnace wall with a diamond axe in one hand and listened as the wheels came closer again. This time, they stopped directly under his boots. "Do not open the hatch," Eli said. Steve had not planned to. 3 iron trap doors covered the shaft, and a block of obsidian sat on top of each one. They had sealed every tunnel before sunset. They had checked every door, every window, and every strip of roof. The keep was bright enough to stop any normal mob from spawning. 4 iron golems guarded the courtyard. 12 wolves sat inside the main hall. Still, something was below them. It scraped one long limb across the bottom of the floor. Nico backed away from the hatch. It found the rail line. "It already knew about the rail line," Steve said. "Mara used it the night she disappeared." No one answered. Mara had been gone for 2 nights. Her bed still stood in the upper room. Her armor was missing, but her sword had been found outside the keep, pushed halfway into a dirt block as if someone had tried to leave a sign. Beside it, Steve had found 3 words made from redstone dust. "Do not turn." They had obeyed that warning ever since. Outside, the square moon rose above the spruce trees. It was the 6th night since the black figure had first appeared at the edge of their wheat field. According to Nico's notes, the thing returned every 3 to 6 nights. The group had decided to leave Blackpine at dawn. They had packed food, tools, maps, spare beds, and every useful item they could carry. A road west led to an ocean base more than 2,000 blocks away. If they reached it before the next sunset, they believed they might be safe. This was meant to be their last night in the keep. The wheels moved again. Steve watched the obsidian over the middle hatch. For 1 second, nothing happened. Then the block rose a tiny amount and dropped back into place. The wolves stood at the same time. None of them barked. Their heads all turned toward the wall behind Steve. Eli's face lost its color. "Steve?" "What?" "Walk toward me. Do not look back." Steve felt cold air touch the back of his neck. A sound followed it, very low and very close. It was not a growl. It sounded like slow breathing pulled through a deep cave. He took 1 step. The sound moved with him. He took another. It stayed 3 blocks behind. Nico raised his shield but did not move. "It is in the room." Steve could see nothing in front of him except his friends and the warm light of lanterns. Yet the room had become darker at the edges. Thin black fingers began to slide into view from both sides of his sight, curling inward as if 2 hands were reaching around his head. Mara's warning struck him at once. Do not turn. It had not meant never turn. It had meant do not turn too late. Steve spun around. A black face filled the space behind him. 2 white eyes hung in a head darker than coal. Above them, a tall split jaw opened like a broken door. White bars lined its edge. A second mouth sat below the first, bent into a wide, empty grin. Horns and thin branches rose from its back. Its body was far too tall for the room, yet it had folded itself between the floor and ceiling without breaking either one. The lamps went out. For a single beat, the creature remained frozen, Its white eyes widened. A sharp image of its face seemed to flash across the whole room, though no one had moved closer. Then it vanished. Every lantern came back on. Steve fell against the crafting table and pulled in air. The wolves began barking at the empty space. Nico stared at Steve. "You saw it." "The silent one," Steve said. "Mara wrote about it." On the second night of the haunting, they had found a book in Mara's chest. It held only 5 short rules. It walks when no one watches. It stops before it moves again. If the world goes quiet, run. If it stands behind you, notice it before the hands close. Do not try to kill it. Mara had not explained how she knew those rules. She had laughed when Steve asked and said she had seen a name in an old file hidden beneath the keep. The name was asphyxiation. She disliked saying it, so did everyone else. From that moment on, they called the creature the Black Thing, the Stalker, or simply it. Something struck the floor below with enough force to crack 2 stone bricks. Steve opened his pack. "We leave now." "The plan was dawn," Eli said. "It is already inside the walls. The keep will not last until dawn." Nico looked toward the dark windows. "Outside is where it wants us. Then we do not use the road." Steve pointed at the sealed shaft. "We take the rail tunnel east, reach the old nether gate, and cross to the first base. The tower there has elytra, rockets, and spare beds. If we have to stay ahead of it until sunrise, we will need all 3. The words sounded firm, but Steve knew the tunnel was a bad choice. It was narrow. It had few exits. Mara had entered it and never returned. Yet the creature had already shown that stone walls meant nothing to it. Open ground would let it see them from any side. At least the rail line could carry them fast. They moved the obsidian and opened the center hatch. The shaft below was empty. A ladder dropped 12 blocks to the station. The minecart waited on the rail, gently rocking. Steve went first. He held a torch in his shield hand and climbed down 1 step at a time. The station looked untouched. 3 empty carts sat against the wall. A lever remained in the off position. The east tunnel was a black square beyond the reach of the torch. Steve placed a lantern on the floor. Light spread across the rails and stopped at a dark patch 10 blocks away. The stone in that patch did not reflect any light. He lifted his spyglass. At first he saw only black. Then 2 small white eyes opened near the roof. The creature stood sideways across the tunnel. Long arms held its body between the walls. Its legs did not touch the ground. The upper jaw was shut, but the lower white grin showed beneath it. Steve lowered the glass. "Back up," he whispered. The others were still on the ladder. Nico looked over Steve's shoulder before Steve could stop him. All sound ended. The minecart stopped rocking. The wolves above fell silent. Even the fire in Steve's torch made no noise. The black figure unfolded itself from the tunnel wall and placed 1 thin foot on the rail. It began to walk toward them. 3 slow steps. Then it stopped. Steve's heartbeat seemed louder than the whole world. He remembered another line from Nico's notes. When seen, it gave its target a short chance to run. On earlier nights, they had counted close to 15 seconds. No one knew why. Perhaps it enjoyed watching fear grow. Perhaps it wanted the chase. "Up," Steve said. They climbed. Steve reached the crafting room last and slammed the hatch. The creature had not yet roared. Eli pushed the obsidian back into place. 5 seconds. Steve led them through the main hall. 8 seconds. The wolves crowded around the door. Nico opened it, and cold night air rushed in. 11 seconds. They crossed the courtyard. One iron golem turned toward the keep. Another raised both arms. 14. A roar tore through the stone beneath them. The courtyard blocks shook. Glass burst from every window in the keep. The 3 iron trapdoors flew upward together, carrying the obsidian blocks with them. A black arm shot from the open shaft, hooked around the ceiling, and pulled the rest of the creature into the hall. "Run!" Steve shouted. They sprinted through the outer gate. Behind them, the golems attacked. Heavy iron fists struck once, twice, then a red flash lit the courtyard. Metal blocks flew over the wall. One landed beside Steve and rolled across the path. It was the head of a golem. The forest road curved downhill. Steve could hear Nico behind him and Eli farther to the left. The roar had given all 3 of them a strange weakness. Their legs felt heavy. Sprinting took more effort than it should. The hunger bar dropped with each jump. "River," Eli called. They left the road and ran toward the sound of water. Steve did not look back. He heard branches snap above them, not behind. The creature was moving through the tops of the trees. A dark limb came down between Steve and Nico. It struck the ground so hard that dirt blocks jumped into the air. Steve rolled beneath another branch and drew his axe. Nico turned right. Eli kept left. The group split without meaning to. Steve reached the riverbank first. A boat waited beside a torch. He jumped in and pushed away. Eli ran through the reeds and leaped into the rear seat just as the boat began to move. "Where is Nico?" Eli asked. Steve looked back. Nico stood at the edge of the trees. The creature towered behind him, its body hidden among the trunks. Nico could not see it. He was searching the river for them. Black hands began to enter the sides of Nico's sight. Steve knew because Nico suddenly slapped at the air near his face. "Turn around," Steve shouted. Nico heard him. He started to turn. The hands closed first. The creature wrapped one arm around Nico's chest and lifted him off the ground. Its other limb sharpened into a long point. Nico's shield fell into the grass. For 1 second, his eyes met Steve's. Then the black arm drove through Nico's helmet. His body vanished in a white burst. Tools, food, armor, and bright green experience orbs scattered across the bank. The creature lowered its head toward the river. Its 2 white eyes fixed on Steve. The boat shot downstream. Steve rowed until the spruce trees became a dark wall behind them. He expected the roar to fade. It did not. Each time the sound weakened, it returned from a new place ahead. The black figure appeared on the left bank, stopped, and vanished. A few breaths later, it stood on the right. It did not need to follow the river. It was choosing where they would see it. Eli took out the clock. "The moon has not moved." Steve glanced up. Eli was right. The moon still touched the same sharp point above the trees. "We have been running for at least 10 minutes, Steve said. "Longer." The boat passed a patch of sugarcane they both knew. Steve had harvested it on the way to Blackpine weeks earlier. He remembered the bend that came next and the stone bridge beyond it. Instead, the same patch of sugar cane appeared again. Eli gripped the side of the boat. "We are going in a circle." "The river does not circle." They passed the cane a third time. On the fourth pass, someone stood among it. Mara stepped into the torchlight wearing cracked iron armor. Her hair was wet. She held no weapon. A line of signs had been placed behind her, but they faced away from the water. "Steve," she called, "do not stop the boat." He nearly dropped the oars. "Mara?" "Keep moving. It changes the land when you slow down." Eli stared at her. "We thought you were dead." "So did I." Mara ran along the bank beside them. "There is a tunnel under the bridge. I can break the loop, but you have to trust me." The stone bridge appeared through the fog. Its center arch was blocked with oak planks. Mara took out a fire striker, used it once, and set the planks on fire. Steve heard a roar upstream. Mara pointed through the burning gap. "Go now!" The boat hit the weak planks and broke through. Behind them, the river, the forest, and the bright square moon vanished, as if a huge black wall had dropped across the opening. The boat slid into a narrow underground channel. Mara jumped from the bank and landed behind Eli. The three of them entered the dark just as something long and sharp scraped over the stone bridge above. The channel dropped through a hole in the rock. The boat struck the lower water and broke apart. Steve, Eli, and Mara were thrown into a flooded cave. They climbed onto a shelf of stone while broken planks drifted past them. Mara placed a torch. It burned with a weak blue edge. "Tell us what happened," Steve said. "Not here. We crossed half the world looking for you." "Then keep crossing." She pointed into a low tunnel. "It can enter the cave, but it has trouble when the path changes height. We have maybe 1 minute since it killed Nico." Eli looked at her sharply. "How do you know about Nico?" Mara's face tightened. "I heard the kill sound." Steve had heard no such sound, only the roar and the river. He studied Mara in the blue torchlight. Her boots were almost broken. Several arrows stuck from her chest plate. She had no food in her pack and only one torch left. Everything about her looked real, including the small notch Steve had cut into her helmet after she lost a bet in the Nether. Still, the thing outside had already bent a river into a circle. Steve no longer trusted what looked real. "What did I put under your bed when we built the keep?" he asked. Mara did not slow. "A trapped chest linked to a note block. You said it would teach me not to steal your bread. I opened it at midnight and woke every wolf in the hall." Eli let out the breath he had been holding. Steve followed her into the tunnel. They crawled until the roof rose above their heads. The passage joined an old mine shaft. Broken supports crossed the path. Cobwebs filled side rooms, and abandoned rails disappeared into pits. Mara had placed signs along the wall. Each one carried a single number. 58. 47. 31. 19. "A count?" Steve asked. "Seconds," Mara said. "The first time it chased me, it vanished after 30 seconds. The second time it caught a zombie before it reached me. After that, it stayed for almost a minute. Every time it kills something it has chosen, the time grows." Steve thought of Nico's items scattered by the river. So now it gets longer. Much longer. Eli looked back into the passage. "What happens when the count reaches 0? It leaves sometimes. Sometimes? Mara stopped beside a support beam. Deep cuts ran through the wood, far above Steve's head. There are different ones. The walker gives you time to run. The silent one stands behind you. Another has no eyes. It floats, and it gets faster the closer it comes. I waited out the walker in a cave. The one with no eyes arrived before I could leave. They are separate creatures? Eli asked. I thought so at first. Then I watched one change. So, asphyxiation is all of them? Eli asked. Mara nodded, one hunter wearing several shapes. The mine shaft creaked around them. Mara lowered her voice. It folded its face shut. The eyes sank into the black. Its feet left the floor. It became something else because I had learned how to survive the first shape. Steve looked at the cuts in the beam. Why did you write the warning with redstone? It followed me back to the keep. I heard it behind me when I reached the field. The hands were already at the edge of my sight. I knew that if I turned, the chase would start near all of you. If I did not turn, it would kill me, so I threw the sword down and ran for the river. It chased me through the trees. But the river changed. Every bend brought me back to the same bank. For 2 nights? Mara nodded. The sun rose, but only for a few seconds. Then the moon came back. I found this shaft and placed signs each time the creature vanished. I stopped sleeping. Whenever I tried, the same message came into my head. Monsters are nearby. They reached a junction where 5 tunnels met. Mara chose the one with no rails. Steve placed a torch at the entrance so they could find it again. The flame leaned toward them. There was no wind. Move, Mara whispered. They hurried down the tunnel. The blue edge returned to every torch they passed. One by one, the flames went dark behind them. At first, Steve heard only their boots. Then came the slow scrape of something moving over the roof. It stopped each time they stopped. When they ran, it ran. When they walked, it matched their pace. The tunnel ended at a ravine. A wooden bridge crossed to another section of the shaft. Far below, lava lit the stone walls orange. Mara stepped onto the bridge first. A pale shape sat in a minecart on the other side. It was Nico. He wore no helmet. A black hole marked the center of his forehead. His hands rested in his lap, and his eyes were fixed on Steve. Eli made a broken sound. That is not possible. The minecart rolled forward without powered rails. Nico's mouth opened. You left my things. Steve drew his bow. Do not shoot, Mara said. It wants you to look at the wrong shape. The scraping above them stopped. Steve looked up. The horned creature hung beneath the bridge, its arms and legs wrapped around the wooden planks. The white jaws opened downward. 2 bright eyes stared through gaps in the floor. The sharp flash filled Steve's sight again. He counted at once, 15. Mara ran across the bridge. Eli followed. Steve fired an arrow at the rope holding the nearest support. It snapped, but the bridge remained in place. 10. Nico's minecart reached the middle. The figure inside rose too smoothly, as if pulled by a string. 7. Steve crossed. Mara cut the second rope. 4. The bridge tipped. The false Nico fell from the cart and broke into black smoke before reaching the lava. The roar came at 1. The creature released the bridge and swung up onto the far ledge. It did not fall. Its limbs caught the stone. Steve, Eli, and Mara ran as the bridge dropped into the ravine behind them. For a moment, Steve believed the gap would slow it. Then a long black hand reached across the whole ravine and gripped the wall beside his head. The rest of the body followed. They raced through the abandoned mine. Mara knew every turn. She led them under cave spider nests and through a gap cut behind a wall of gravel. The creature stayed close without making footsteps. Its arms struck through openings beside them. White eyes appeared in dark side tunnels. Each time Steve looked directly at them, the eyes moved somewhere else. Eli threw a splash potion of speed. Blue rings spread around all three survivors, but the creature answered with a deep pulse. A grey mark appeared over Steve's sight. His legs became heavy again. "Slowness," Eli gasped. "It cancels the potion." "Not all of it," Steve said. "Keep running." The gravel passage opened into a strong room Mara had built during her second day underground. Iron doors covered both ends, chests lined one wall, a half-finished nether portal stood in the center. "I found the obsidian in a lava pool," she said. "I had no iron left to make fire." Steve dropped his pack and searched it. Nico had carried their fire striker. The spare had been left in the boat chest at Blackpine. Eli opened the nearest chest. "There is nothing here but rotten flesh and string." The iron door behind them bent inward. One hit. Mara placed cobwebs in front of it. 2 hits. Cracks spread across the top block. Steve searched every slot in his pack. Food, rockets, a water bucket, an ender chest, a compass, redstone, no fire striker. "Lava," he said. He placed a wooden plank beside the portal, then emptied a lava bucket against it. Fire caught along the edge. Mara added more planks. Eli blocked the lava before it spread across the floor. The iron door broke. A long arm pushed through the cobwebs. The webs held it for less than a second, but that second was enough. Fire touched the inside of the obsidian frame. Purple light rolled across the portal. Mara jumped through, Eli followed. Steve backed toward the purple surface. The creature forced its upper mouth through the doorway. White bars opened around a square of total black. Steve entered the nether. Heat struck him. He appeared in a small basalt chamber beside Mara and Eli. The portal hummed behind them. Old signs pointed toward tunnels marked First Base, Fortress, and Ice Road. Mara grabbed Steve's arm. "Break the portal." He took out his diamond pickaxe and struck one obsidian block. Cracks spread slowly. Something entered the purple light on the other side. "Faster," Eli said. Steve kept mining. The cracks covered the block. A black hand pushed through the portal. The obsidian broke. The purple field vanished. The hand dropped onto the floor without the body attached. It twitched twice, turned to smoke, and disappeared. No one moved. The nether chamber was silent except for distant lava. Eli checked the clock, even though clocks spun without meaning in that place. "Can it cross now?" "It needs a portal," Steve said. Mara stared at the empty frame. It never needed a door before. They chose the ice road. A packed ice tunnel ran more than 200 blocks through the nether roof. Boats waited in a chest. The tunnel would carry them to a portal near their first base, far west in the overworld. Steve hoped distance would break the creature's hold on the river and allow the moon to move again. They climbed into separate boats and raced across the ice. The dark tunnel flashed past. Blue lamps marked every 20 blocks. Steve reached the first turn, then the second. He watched the numbers painted on signs rise toward the exit. At marker 180, Mara's boat vanished from the ice. Steve stopped. Eli struck the back of his boat and spun sideways. "Mara?" Steve called. Her boat rested ahead, empty. A narrow black gap had opened in the tunnel wall beside it. The gap had not been there when they built the road. Cold air flowed from it, impossible in the nether. Mara's voice came from inside. "Steve, do not come in." He left the boat and approached. "Are you hurt?" "No. I am standing behind you." Steve stopped. Eli was 10 blocks back. The empty ice between them reflected the blue lamps. In that reflection, a tall black shape stood directly behind Steve, though there was nothing above the ice when he looked forward. Hands began to slide into the sides of his sight. He turned. The creature appeared for one sharp instant. Its face had no eyes this time. Both white jaws were shut. Its feet hung 1 block above the ice. Then it flew backward into the dark, as if the tunnel had pulled it away. Mara crawled out of the gap. "It opened the wall under my boat." Eli stared at the empty portal frame far behind them. "It crossed without the gate." "No," Mara said. "It crossed through Steve." Steve wanted to argue, but the cold behind his neck had not gone away. He could still feel the shape standing 3 blocks behind him, even when the tunnel was empty. The creature had marked him when he looked into its face. Breaking a portal could not break that link. They returned to the boats and kept moving. No one spoke until marker 240, where the ice road ended at another basalt room. This portal was still lit. A sign above it read Home 1. Their first base waited on the other side. They had built it during their first week in the world, before diamond armor, before potions, and long before Blackpine Keep. It was a rough cobblestone house at the foot of a mountain. A farm, an animal pen, and a small tower stood nearby. They had not visited in months. The sun should have been rising over the mountain. Instead, the same square moon hung above the trees. Eli checked the clock. Its hand had stopped at midnight. "Distance did nothing," he said. Mara looked toward the tower. "The elytra are up there." "2 pairs," Steve said. "Maybe 3. We left rockets in the flight chest." They crossed the old yard. Wheat had grown wild around the water trench. Sheep filled the pen, pressed together in one corner. Every animal faced away from the forest. The front door of the base was open. Steve knew he had closed it on their last visit. Inside, dust covered the floor. The first wooden tools they had made still hung in item frames. 3 colored beds stood along the rear wall. Someone had placed a 4th bed beside them. It was black. "Was that here before?" Eli asked. Steve shook his head. Mara walked around the bed without touching it. A book lay on the pillow. Its cover had no title. Steve opened it. The first page showed a list of nights. Night 1, watched from the trees. Night 4, entered the mine. Night 6, took the one who looked away. Night 9, no sunrise. The next page held 3 names: Mara, Nico, Eli. Steve turned the page. His own name had been written hundreds of times, smaller and smaller until the letters became a solid black square. He threw the book into the fireplace. The pages caught at once. A scream came from the chimney, deep enough to shake ash from the stone. Eli backed toward the door. It knows this place. It knows every place we remember, Mara said. That is how it opened the road. That is why it used Nico. Steve took his axe to the black bed. The first hit made no mark. The second caused a red crack to cross the blanket. On the third hit, the bed broke into black dust. Every sheep outside died at once. Their bodies vanished in a row of white bursts. Raw mutton and wool covered the pen. The experience orbs did not move. They hovered like green eyes in the dark. The creature stood beyond the fence. It had returned to its walking shape. Horns rose above the small trees. Branch-like arms spread across the farm. The tall upper jaw leaned to one side. Two white eyes watched the doorway. Steve did not wait for silence. Tower, now. They ran through the rear door and crossed the yard. The creature walked beside the fence, matching them. It took 5 steps and stopped, 5 more and stopped again. It was not chasing yet. It was showing them how little space remained. The tower door opened onto a ladder. Eli climbed first, then Mara. Steve followed and closed the trapdoor beneath him. They passed the storage floor and reached the old bedroom. 3 beds sat under windows on opposite walls. Steve tried the closest one. You may not rest now. There are monsters nearby. The warning entered his mind as clearly as a spoken voice. Mara tried the second bed. She stood at once. Same message. Eli looked out the east window. It is gone. The tower shook. One long black arm had wrapped around the outside. Another reached up from below and covered the west window. The creature was climbing. They went higher. The top room held flight gear, maps, and fireworks. Steve opened the chest. 2 elytra rested inside. One was badly damaged. There were 27 rockets. 3 people, 2 wings, Eli said. Mara took the damaged pair and put them on. There is a repair chest on the roof. Steve remembered it. They had stored phantom membranes there after one of their long building trips. The roof was only 10 blocks above. A white eye appeared outside the narrow window. All sound ended. The creature held itself against the tower. Its face turned sideways, watching them through stone bars. Steve felt the flash tear across his sight. 15, he said. They climbed to the roof. 12. Mara opened the repair chest. It contained 1 phantom membrane, an anvil, a totem of undying, and 6 rockets. 9. She placed the elytra on the anvil. Steve gave her levels from bottles of enchanting. 6. The anvil rang. Mara took the repaired wings. 3. Steve put on the second pair. Eli had none. The roar struck at 0. Stone blocks burst from the side of the tower. A horn pushed through the floor. Steve lost his footing and fell toward the hole. Eli caught his arm and pulled him back. Mara gave Eli her elytra. No, Eli said. You know where the mountain launch is. Fly there and open the red stone doors. What about you? Mara held up the totem of undying. I have another way down. The creature's upper jaw rose through the roof. White bars opened beneath Mara. Eli put on the wings. Steve gave him 9 rockets. They jumped from the tower. Steve opened his elytra and fell into a glide. Eli fired a rocket beside him. They flew toward the mountain, barely clearing the spruce trees. Mara remained on the roof. She raised the totem in one hand and stared directly at the creature. The black head snapped toward her. A limb drove through the roof. Mara jumped at the same moment. She fell down the outside of the tower while the creature followed, its many arms tearing stone away as it dropped. Mara struck the ground. Green and gold light burst around her. The totem saved her life. She stood in the crater with one heart, then ran toward the forest. The creature landed behind her. Steve turned his wings, but Eli shouted across the air, "She gave us time. Do not waste it." Mara threw an ender pearl. It carried her into the trees. The creature followed. Steve and Eli reached the mountain. Their first flight platform stood near the peak, built from stone slabs and redstone lamps. Two iron doors led into a bunker under the launch ramp. Eli landed badly and rolled across the snow. Steve struck the platform edge, lost 4 hearts, and slid to a stop beside him. They entered the bunker and pulled the lever. The doors closed. Pistons pushed stone blocks behind them. The room held enough gear for long trips. Rockets filled 3 chests. Spare elytra hung on armor stands. Potions sat in brewing racks. At the far wall, an old map showed every place they had built in the world. A red point moved across that map. It started near the first base. It passed through the forest and climbed the mountain in a straight line. "Mara is coming," Steve said. Eli looked through the viewing slit. Mara stepped onto the snow below. Her armor was gone. She limped, but she was alive. The red point on the map stopped beneath her. Steve reached for the door lever. Mara looked up at the bunker and shook her head. Behind her, the snow rose in a long black shape. The creature had flattened itself against the ground beneath her feet. Horns unfolded from the white surface. Arms rose around her like dead trees. Mara took out a sign and placed it in the snow. Steve read the words through his spyglass. "Do not open." The creature lifted her. Mara did not scream. She kept looking at Steve until one black limb passed through her chest. Her body vanished, and her few remaining items fell onto the snow. The red point on the map split into 2. One remained outside. The other appeared inside the bunker, 3 blocks behind Steve. It was still asphyxiation, but each death had given it another way to hunt. Eli saw the black hands enter Steve's sight. "Turn!" Steve spun with his axe raised. There was no body behind him. Only Mara's sign stood in the center of the room. The words had changed. "It can be in 2 places now." The red point inside the bunker moved. It slid across the map toward Steve. He stepped away. The point followed. Eli raised a torch and swept it across the room. The light touched chests, armor stands, and smooth stone walls. Nothing stood between them. Then one armor stand turned its head. It wore no armor. It had no moving parts. Yet its wooden face slowly looked toward Eli. Black fingers appeared over Eli's shoulders. "Behind you," Steve said. Eli turned at once. The silent face flashed between them. It had no body, only 2 eyes and 2 broken white mouths floating in the air. Eli fell backward. The face disappeared before it touched him. Outside, the other creature struck the bunker doors. The first layer of stone broke. Steve looked at the moving points. It divides when it kills. Nico made its chase longer. Mara gave it another shape. Eli took 3 stacks of rockets from a chest. Then we fly in different directions. If it chooses you, I cannot help. If we stay together, it can kill us one after the other. The second hit broke a piston. Snow and moonlight showed through a crack above the doors. Steve filled his pack with rockets, healing potions, and cooked beef. He gave Eli a chest plate with strong protection and took a spare helmet. They each carried an ender pearl. There was no time for a better plan. East and west, Eli said. You go west to the ocean. I go east over the peaks. We stay in the air for 5 minutes, then meet at the old spawn house. Steve looked at the clock. The hand is still stuck. The sky can lie. 5 minutes cannot. The outer doors bent inward. They climbed the ladder to the launch ramp. Snow blew across the slabs. The creature outside had wrapped itself around the whole mountain bunker. One white eye watched through the broken door. Its upper jaw reached over the roof. The second red point on the map reached the ladder below them. Steve and Eli stood at opposite ends of the ramp. "Do not land," Steve said. "Do not turn too late," Eli answered. They pulled both levers. Piston launchers pushed them from the mountain. Steve opened his wings and fired a rocket west. Eli shot east. They crossed above the peak and separated. The creature made a sound Steve had never heard before. It was half roar, half laughter. 2 black shapes rose from the mountain. One crawled through the air after Eli. The other followed Steve. This one had no eyes. Its horns lay flat along its back. Its arms reached ahead as if it were swimming. At first, it moved slowly. Steve gained 50 blocks and looked back. The creature became faster. Mara's warning returned to him. It gets faster the closer it comes. Steve fired another rocket. He flew over spruce forest, a frozen lake, and the ruined village where they had once fought a raid. The black shape stayed behind him. It did not need rockets. It rose and fell with no wings. Each time Steve gained space, it slowed. Each time he turned or lost speed, it rushed closer. He stopped looking back. The dark sky stretched without change. The moon remained above his right shoulder. Steve counted rockets instead of seconds. He used one every few breaths and dropped the empty paper into the night. Far to the east, a small firework flashed. Eli was still flying. Steve crossed the plains. The old spawn house was somewhere ahead, but the ocean lay another 1,000 blocks west. He had enough rockets to reach it. He did not have enough to circle for 5 minutes if the darkness kept the world folded around him. He passed the same ruined village again. The creature had bent the land into another loop. Steve turned north. The no-eyed figure cut the corner and came within 10 blocks. Its closed white mouth began to open. A low sound filled the air and grew louder as it approached. Steve dived. He dropped between village roofs, passed under a stone arch, and fired a rocket close to the ground. The creature struck the church wall. Cobblestone burst outward, but the blow slowed it. Steve climbed again. A hill appeared ahead with an old pillager tower at the top. A single rocket flashed above it. Eli landed on the roof. "Why are you here?" Steve shouted as he passed. "The east kept turning me west." The world had forced them together. Eli fired his last rocket and joined Steve in the air. His elytra showed deep red damage marks. "I have 2 rockets left," he said. Steve threw him a stack. It fell short and vanished below. Both black shapes arrived from opposite sides. The walker moved through the air by grabbing empty space. The floating one came behind Steve. For a few seconds the creatures crossed, their limbs tied into one dark knot, then pulled apart again. Eli's wings broke. He dropped onto the roof of the pillager tower. Steve turned toward him, but the floating creature moved between them. Eli drew his sword. Pillagers climbed from the lower floors, firing crossbows at everything. Arrows passed through the black body. One struck Eli's shield. "Go!" Eli shouted. "I can use the tower stairs." The walker landed on the roof. Steve saw the flash. The 15-second count had started for Eli. He fired a rocket and flew west. Behind him, the outpost horn sounded. Crossbows cracked. At 15 seconds, the creature roared. The roof vanished in a storm of wood. Eli jumped from the side and caught a ladder 1 floor down. The creature did not use the ladder. It pushed one arm through the wall, caught Eli by the waist, and pulled him back onto the roof. Steve was too far away to hear Eli's last words. He saw only the bright burst of items and the black head turning west. Both creatures joined again. The new body was larger. It rose above the tower, with many arms spread across the sky. 2 eyes opened, then 2 more. Its white jaws split into 4 broken curves. Nico's death had lengthened its hunt. Mara's had divided it. Eli's death gave it speed. Steve was the only one left. He fired 3 rockets without pause. The plains blurred beneath him. The ruined village came into view for a 3rd time. Steve closed his eyes. He flew by sound. Wind moved past his helmet. The creature's low breath came from behind. He counted 4 seconds, turned hard left, and opened his eyes. The village was gone. Dark ocean filled the land ahead. The loop had depended on him seeing the path it wanted him to follow. For one blind turn, he had left it. Steve raced over the shore. The ocean base stood on a small island far ahead. Its lighthouse beam should have turned across the water, but the lamp was dark. He aimed for the highest roof. The creature left the coast and floated after him. With no hills or trees in the way, it gained speed. The sound behind Steve grew until it covered the rush of air. His elytra lost more strength with each rocket. A tear appeared along the left wing. He drank a slow-falling potion in case it broke, then kept flying. The island was 200 blocks away. The black hands entered the sides of his sight. Steve turned in the air. The creature was close enough to touch. Its 4 eyes burned white. The upper jaw opened over Steve's head, while the lower grin rose beneath his feet. The sight of it froze the world. Steve felt the warning count begin. He had 15 seconds. He turned back toward the island and used every rocket he could hold. The elytra shook. Firework sparks filled the dark. The lighthouse grew larger. 10 seconds. Steve reached the island shore. 7. He passed the lighthouse window. 4. The flight chest waited on the roof, but landing would cost time. Steve broke the glass wall with his shoulder and crashed into the lamp room. 1. The roar hit the island. The creature struck the lighthouse. Stone split from top to bottom. Steve rolled across the floor and opened the emergency chest. Inside lay the one item they had saved for the Ender Dragon and never used. A totem of undying. He held it just as the black arm came through the wall. The limb pinned him against the lamp. A sharp point drove through his diamond helmet. Green and gold light exploded around him. The totem broke. Steve's heart rose from empty, and the force threw the creature back through the wall. For the first time, the monster paused in confusion. Steve pulled the lighthouse lever. Redstone lamps lit from the bottom floor to the top. The great lens turned. A beam of white light swept across the ocean and struck the creature. Its black body became thin inside the beam. Steve could see shapes trapped within it. Nico holding his shield, Mara placing a sign, Eli falling with broken wings. They were only shadows, but each one pulled against the creature from inside. The monster screamed. Steve jumped through the broken wall and opened his damaged elytra. He had 6 rockets left. He flew straight west over the ocean while the lighthouse beam turned behind him. The creature followed, but it no longer gained. Each pass of the light tore smoke from its limbs. Its eyes blinked out one by one. Steve used his last rocket. The moon moved. It slid 1 block toward the horizon. At first, Steve thought the change was another trick. Then the black sky ahead became gray. A thin orange line appeared over the water. The first light of morning spread across the ocean. The creature stopped. It hung above the waves, silent and far behind. The white jaws closed, its many arms folded into its body. For a moment it became the same narrow figure that had watched the wheat field 6 nights earlier. Then the sunrise passed through it. The creature faded from its feet upward. The horns were last. When they disappeared, the moon sank. The stars went out, and the world began making sound again. Steve landed in shallow water beside a small sandbar. His elytra broke as his boots touched the ground. He stood there until the sun was fully above the ocean. Blackpine Keep was empty when he returned 2 days later. The river no longer looped. The mineshaft held no numbered signs. At the first base, the black bed was gone. No book lay in the ashes. The world looked as though the creature had never entered it. Steve found Nico's shield beside the river, Mara's final sign in the mountain snow, and Eli's cracked elytra below the pillager tower. He carried all 3 back to the ocean island. He repaired the lighthouse and placed their items in frames around the lamp room. He never rebuilt Blackpine. He never traveled after sunset. Before each square sun touched the horizon, he placed a bed, checked the land around him, and slept. For many weeks, the nights passed before they could begin. Then Steve returned from mining one evening and found that the bed inside the lighthouse had turned black. He did not break it. He did not touch it. He backed toward the stairs while every wolf on the island faced the space 3 blocks behind him. On the bed lay Mara's old book. A new line had appeared beneath the 5 rules. Steve read it without turning around. The first night was for fear. The last night is for you. Outside, the sun stopped 1 block above the ocean.